What was going through your head during that period of time?
Oh my God. I mean, there are memories that I will never forget, both good and bad. No, kidding aside. 36 hours, Jaideep, of that IPO, leaving for New York and coming back. That was 36 hours. And I remember that I was fueled purely by two things: caffeine and adrenaline. That's it. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't slept. I was losing my mind. But that was the last bit, right? The 6 weeks leading up to it, I was a new employee, and ideally I would have loved to learn about the technology, the products, the people, get to know. I didn't have the luxury of doing any of that. That's interesting you put it that way. I think a little bit of the dilution has happened because of software companies coming up with roles that have been hybrid between product management and product marketing. But if I go back to the basics and think about product marketing, it has always been about value creation and value articulation, right? So when I was a product, and I spent a lot of time in audio back in those years, several years in National and then Dolby Labs. So it was
Hmm.
really end-to-end management of a portfolio, right? So you get the voice of the customer, you get the definition of the product done, push it through your design, development, testing, quality phases, and then launch it. But after the launch, you get customer feedback into it, so you can rope it back into the next cycle of development, right? And that's how you create a hardware or a chip portfolio.
The reality is that you guys are actually probably powering a lot of AI companies, right? And how do you explain this to an average Joe? I mean, people who really don't come from tech background.
Yeah, you put it so well that sometimes people turn off. For many years, I think decades, semiconductor companies were not drawing the kind of talent because engineering students graduating wanted to go to the cooler companies, and semiconductors stopped being cool at some point. I remember when I left National Semiconductor, it was a bit similar, where I wanted to focus on the top line and innovation and growth, whereas the company seemed to be focused on the bottom line and operations and cost cutting and cost management. So I went on to software myself, right? So I've done that. But now, lo and behold, after all these years, semiconductors are cool again. I think Nvidia had a lot to do with that. They brought it back, and they really helped people understand that semiconductors are at the fundamental base level of every innovation that's happening. You can't do it without the hardware.
Welcome to the Marketing Couch, where I talk to some of the sharpest minds in B2B marketing, sales, products, and founders. I recently had the pleasure of speaking with Paroma Sen, VP of Corporate Marketing at Astera Labs, a Silicon Valley based semiconductor company that went public in 2024. What makes Paroma's story compelling is her diverse journey across continents, industries, and marketing functions, from B2B enterprise software at SAP to D2C fashion e-commerce in India. Paroma brings a unique combination of technical depth and creative thinking to marketing. With a master's in electrical engineering, an advertising degree, and an MBA from UC Berkeley, she has worked at leading tech companies including SAP, National Semiconductor, and Dolby Laboratories before landing at Astera Labs just 2 months before their IPO. In our conversation, we dive into her experience navigating that intense IPO period, her strategy for making semiconductors accessible and exciting in the AI era, and how she's built marketing teams from scratch across different markets. We also explore her perspective on AI adoption in marketing, the differences between marketing in India versus Silicon Valley, and what it takes to succeed as a B2B marketing leader today. Paroma's journey from product marketing manager to a global marketing executive offers valuable insights for anyone building their marketing career. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed talking to her. With this, I bring you Paroma Sen. Welcome, Paroma. Good to have you on the marketing couch.
Good to be here with you, Jaideep.
Great. Super excited to have you. And it's already past 9 o'clock for me here in India, and I think you are enjoying some good weather. I can see the background.
Yeah, well, it's summer here in California, so couldn't have hoped for a better place. And then today is just gorgeous outside. It's a little bit cloudy, but it's
Mhm.
beautiful. And yeah, it's the top of the day for me, so looking forward to a productive day ahead.
Fantastic. So I'm in Bangalore, and the weather's is very similar actually. So maybe sometimes we'll do the reverse.
We must do that.
All right, Parma. So just getting started right away, looking at your background and your illustrious profile, I was wondering, you worked in India, you worked in Silicon Valley, you worked in B2B, and you worked in B2C as well. And you work for big companies and small companies and startups. And then you worked, I think, across six industries. And then you joined a company just, I think, about 2 months before they went to IPO.
Hmm.
um, it's kind of huge span, first of all, in terms of your career. Also, at the same time, the timing of your joining your current company is also very interesting. Is that all magic? How does it happens? I don't think everybody can see that kind of opportunities.
That's a great way of putting it, Jenny. Very generous of you. But the truth usually lies in the gray, right, between the white and black. So I'll say it's a mix of both. I mean, of course, I got incredibly lucky with Astera Labs because the recruiter found me and then realized that I was actually connected with the founders since my time at National 20 years back. So that was the luck. And then the fitment, and then, being able to use all the previous parts of my experience to contribute to this amazing growing story. But where I would say it's a little bit of masochism, as you put it in, earlier, is I've always taken up roles which are different from what I've done before. I will not, I've always told recruiters if it's a 100% match, if what you're offering me against my experience, I will not do that. So being always in that learning mode helped me to have the diverse pieces of experience, which made me be able to contribute here. Otherwise, I would not be able to be here.
It's interesting because a lot of people choose usually a safer shore, but taking up challenge every time you pick up a new role, which is a stretch. Does that really sort of ignites you, gets your best out of, or is this something that is your nature?
I think it's a bit of nature actually, because I'll put it this way. It's nice to say, yeah, I love taking up challenges. I love where it actually boils down for me, Jaideep, is I get bored if I'm doing the same thing. And I realize that with any new role, there is a learning curve. And after the learning curve, there is a plateauing. So when I find myself in the plateau and I find myself getting bored and not sweating and not pushing the edge, part of my brain turns off. And then I'm no longer motivated. I'm no longer waking up in the morning and thinking, yes, I got to do this. And I have, these 5 things on my to do list. And then I feel I'm not living my full life and I'm not doing myself justice. So, in order to stop that entire domino chain of effect, I must challenge myself. I must do something that excites me. And you got one life. You got to live it to the full, don't you?
Totally, totally, I agree. Yeah, and kind of sounds like music to my ear. And we'll talk about it maybe some other day. But let's get going, right? So let's talk about Astera. You work for Astera Labs, and because most people probably think semiconductor company is like, well, it's like high tech, heavy engineering, and they kind of zone out. The reality is that you guys are actually probably powering a lot of AI companies, right? And how do you explain this to an average Joe? I mean, people who really don't come from tech background.
Yeah, you put it so well that sometimes people turn off. For many years, I think decades, semiconductor companies were not drawing the kind of talent because engineering students graduating wanted to go to the cooler companies, and semiconductors stopped being cool at some point. I remember when I left National Semiconductor, it was a bit similar, where I wanted to focus on the top line and innovation and growth, whereas the company seemed to be focused on the bottom line and operations and cost cutting and cost management. So I went on to software myself, right? So I've done that. But now, lo and behold, after all these years, semiconductors are cool again. I think Nvidia had a lot to do with that. They brought it back, and they really helped people understand that semiconductors are at the fundamental base level of every innovation that's happening. You can't do it without the hardware. So if I have to explain what does Astera Labs do for Mr. Joe on the street, I would say that if you think of a server, a data center server, as an organism, there's a brain, there's a heart, there are these major organs, which are the GPUs and the CPUs. But then you need something to connect it all together. You need the nervous system. You need the veins and the arteries. You need the blood flowing. And that's what Astera Labs does. We do the connectivity. Yes.
Wow, I think
We are the
that's very nicely put, especially for those who are not coming from a technology background.
nerve.
Literally sounds like a poetry, but yeah, it is actually the fact, right? I mean, connecting to the organs. to really a nervous system, right? Fantastic. So one of the things that I would also add to that is that semiconductor, like you mentioned, is really cool. Like in India, probably you already know that even the present government is trying to, they're investing very big time and betting very big time on semiconductor. I
Mhm.
believe until you really have that kind of a base, as a country, you're not really respected as a tech, sort of savvy country, right? We've been known for a very long time for services, but I think last decade has seen some of the very cool product companies that have come up. I
Mhm.
think the next 10 years probably you're going to see very cool semiconductor companies setting up their big shops here, and also probably natively grown some interesting semiconductor investments thanks to the present government. So yeah, I guess it's a good time to be in semiconductor, broadly speaking.
Absolutely. It's a great time. There's so much innovation happening. And when you connect the hardware and the software layers in interesting and more optimized ways with innovations happening on the materials management side, there's so many more cool things that's yet to happen. So very exciting time.
Superb. So Astera Labs went to IPO, I think, in 2024, right?
That's right. March 2024, March 20th, I think it was. Yeah.
And I guess you joined in January of that year as the VP of their marketing or corporate marketing. And it was all of you. And I guess there are two people. IPO was happening in March. And I'm guessing everyone is kind of stressed out looking at probably you to pull things out. Especially, I can only understand how marketing would sort of shoulder that responsibility of communication. There are so many stakeholders during the IPO. This is such a big game, big occasion, right? What was going through your head during that period of time?
Oh my God. I mean, there are memories that I will never forget, both good and bad. No, kidding aside. 36 hours, Jaideep, of that IPO, leaving for New York and coming back. That was 36 hours. And I remember that I was fueled purely by two things: caffeine and adrenaline. That's it. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't slept. I like, they were, I was losing my mind. But that was the last bit, right? The 6 weeks leading up to it, I was a new employee, and ideally I would have loved to learn about the technology, the products, the people, get to know. I didn't have the luxury of doing any of that. So I came in, and by the way, there was not just the NASDAQ piece, the IPO piece had 9 work streams. That was one beast. We also had a huge product launch happening on our retimer family, and a huge event, GTC, NVIDIA's GTC. So there were these three massive things happening all at the same time, and yeah, I think
Wow.
we all went borderline crazy at some point in that journey, but we pulled it off. I mean, it was crazy, but we got through it, right? So that
You
was
know,
the
my philosophy is that that's a great way to sort of have your induction in the company.
yes.
It actually
I
helps you to learn like a fast,
yes, yes,
like
yes,
like probably 4 weeks of lessons in just 2 days or
yeah.
3 days, or maybe 6 months of lessons in 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
Yeah, and that goes back to when I started my career with National Semiconductor, the culture very much was sink or swim. And I think when
Mm.
people are put through some very critical times like this, the true metal stands out. So either I would have stayed or I would have left, right? Those are the only two options. And I think that sort of shows who you are to yourself more than anything else. Am I, can I do this? Can I do even
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. And I guess you get to know people very quickly because you got to work with a lot of people at that time, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Also get a quick brush up of your product family, because probably that was also required. And I guess the best thing is that probably you rightly kind of picturize that 36 hours. It's like almost taking me to that movie of 72 hours in the
Yeah.
Arizona Valley, right? Where you're stuck. Yeah. But all good things happened after that, I guess. The IPO was, I think, good and cool. And it's going to be almost 2 years, 1.5 years for you, more than 1.5 years, right?
Yes, it's 1.5 years, and even last week with our earnings call, the stock has gone like up by a lot. Business is going good, company is doing well, and we are all very grateful to be here.
Awesome. I mean, what could have added more to the party, right?
Yeah.
So with that, I think one of the interesting finding I had is that you spoke about Tiramisu Strategy, which honestly sounds like something that you name probably during a long coffee fuel night, right? So break that down for me. I mean, how does that, so basically without losing your mind, how did all that, and what was the context of that?
Right. So tiramisu is, of course, an Italian dessert that is in layers. And the point of
Correct.
using the word tiramisu is to say that you have to build a new organization within a fledgling company in layers, right? And the biggest disservice you can do to yourself and the company is by not taking that step back and not actually doing the right due diligence by it, right? So that layered strategy would mean, first you think about the infrastructure. Infrastructure means people, process, technology, right? Do you have the right people? If not, what does the organization need to look like in the medium term and then building into the long term? And then process, well, we are still low in process. I feel that's an area we constantly need to fuel. Technology is the tools. Does the team have the tools to do it? And then layered on top of infrastructure is strategy. What are we going to do? What are we not going to do? That's very important. And then how are we going to do what we're going to do? And how do we measure success along the way? And then on top of that is the execution plan. So I built a 3-quarter execution plan. And what holds all of those layers together is alignment. You have to align with everybody, especially with exec. I mean, everybody has to be pointed in the right direction with the blessings and, let's go ahead, let's do this, let's do it in this way that we've said. So that clarity was important. And, with all humility, Jaideep, I don't think that we sit back and think and all of these ideas come, right? You have to put yourself in the right place mentally as a channel to receive the ideas as they come and as the clarity builds over time. So those first few months, those first 2 or 3 months are critical in making this, growing those roots, because then the tree can form on top of that.
Totally. I think that 30, 60, and 90 days plan,
Yeah.
there's a reason for you do that, right? To really, lay the ground, create that base on which you're going to build that whole building, right? The foundation layer. So I think having that vision is super important. The other thing that it has always worked for me is during that period, speak less and listen more. So keep your ears and eyes open, soak in, absorb as much as possible. Speak to diverse group of people, your upper layer, your bottom layer, your peer group. And there's nothing called bad or wrong or right. Just put in, and you will start making a sense. You'll start seeing a pattern. You'll start seeing an opportunity, hopefully, right? So
Right. And
that's how
as
it
you're
happens.
seeing it, as you're seeing and like you said, listening, you're building a point of view, right?
Yes,
And then as
yes.
you're building a point of view, the 60, after the first 30 days, actually, I start reflecting that point of view against people, getting their feedback on, I'm thinking to do it this way. What do you think? Gather
Hmm.
opinions. But in that 90 days, that last 30 of the 30, 60, 90, I say that, I've listened to all of you and this is what we're going to do. So
Yeah,
sometimes you listen to everybody. That doesn't mean
right.
that everything is 100% baked into the plan. The plan will, in sometimes, disagree with some people, and maybe that's the right thing
Right.
to do. Because
The plan is to challenge the status quo.
as a newcomer, you have the advantage of not having the baggage, so you can do a lot
Right.
more things and then apologize, saying that I'm sorry, I didn't know, I'm new.
I think that there is a little bit of risk always to conform and comply, and in the process, I think you forget the outsiding view that you actually brought in, right?
Yes, that they actually
So
hired you for, right?
yeah, exactly. Bring that fresh thinking, right? So where are you right now? I mean, it's a year and a half. I'm sure you build that team from scratch. The org look like, and what are your key charter now?
Yeah. So it is 1.5 years. So I had sort of build the team around four main pillars of corporate marketing, right? Which is design, events, content, and PR. Now, and I'd hired those leads with the intent of, individual contributors eventually growing to team leaders, building their own teams organically. So now that is starting to happen. Some of them have, we've hired people to staff their teams and grow because the volume of work is growing. And of course, there's challenges, good and bad, along the way, because now I'm managing people who are becoming managers. So that is a journey in itself. So getting them there, making sure they're supported, it takes a lot of time and energy and effort and creative thinking. because people are different. And I always say that the team is an organism. So you cannot hire all that are alphas or all that are, in the middle of the curve. You have to hire some of this and some of that, and shape that to the function that they're delivering towards, right? So it's a lot of thinking, and sometimes I feel I'm constantly pushing against my comfort zones because these are learnings that I have not maybe had before. So I'm learning how to do these things, which is interesting, sometimes frustrating, but mostly interesting. So that's one piece of the charter, Jaideep, is how to make the team grow into the vision of Astera Labs. The other part of the charter is our corporate vision. And we want to be seen as a peer to some of the companies that we really value and we think are adding value to the AI infrastructure world, like the NVIDIAs and the AMDs of the world. And if we are to be seen there, we have to position ourselves as a thought leader, not just adding value from products, but also leading the ecosystem, pulling together partners, making, big things happen. So that's part of the elevation that I have to achieve with our team, is how do we elevate our corporate profile to that, to match our vision. Those are the two main things I would say.
So help me understand a little bit about your positioning in the market.
We position ourselves as the leader in connectivity for what we call AI infrastructure 2.0. And if I might say one line about how we talk about AI infrastructure 2.0, AI infrastructure 1.0 was about the server, and the server being the unit of compute. Now that is growing to the rack level. So once it grows to the rack level, we see ourselves, our vision is to provide connectivity for the AI rack as the fundamental unit of compute, right? So everything is growing in scale. And then we talk about scale up and scale out and all of those technologies that we are involved in, from being a leading contributor and, leader in the UA Link consortium and other consortiums like PCIe, CXL, and so on. So that's our positioning. We are still going to be the connectivity leader, but now it's going from the server to the rack
To
and
the
beyond.
rack. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So I think in my first meeting you mentioned that there are some feedback or comments that you've received, or compliment that you've received, that you're really showing up big in certain places. How does that feel? Like the fruit started showing up in some shape and form, right?
Yes, yes. What an amazing moment, Jaideep. This happened specifically, I remember last year, October 2024. We were at the OCP, Open Compute project event that happens in San Jose every year. And we had a booth, and, all our creativity and effort had gone into it. And then somebody, a few people said that you're showing up bigger than your brand, which was such an amazing moment because we had released a product called Scorpio, one of the biggest, most important parts of our product line, and the stock was, going up commensurately with our launch activity and our event activity. So it felt very good. People might say that, are we creating an illusion that's not true, showing up bigger than the brand? But I would pivot that a little bit and say that it's really not an illusion of scale, but it's more like the reality of the vision. That if this is our vision, are we showing up to match that? And that's our
Yeah.
ambition, that's our vision. So I feel grateful to be in a place where I could support making that happen.
Great. Let's go back a little bit. You had spent first 12 years of working, I think, in the US, and then you went back to India for a few years. During that period, you also worked for SAP, and I think you worked for SAP for a good number of years, almost like 7 years, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
And interestingly, you had a cross geography experience working at SAP, I guess, where you worked in India and then you worked, I think, in the US as well. So, how did that look like? Because you started your career, I guess, in the US, and then you went back to India in the middle. You worked in India for some time, where you did your early years, went to school and college, at least your undergrad in India, and then coming back and working in India again for a few years, and then back in the US again. Now, what was the difference, considering that you were in the same company also, where you worked in both sides?
Mhm.
Was there any specific learning that you can think of?
There were immense learnings. I mean, where do I start? So when I left the US and went back to India, I had my core area of work was product marketing, very specific for technology companies. But then when I went to India, I realized there aren't really any product marketing roles there because they're all in headquarters in the US. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? But that pushed me into picking up roles that have ultimately, now that I look back, it broadened my portfolio. So for example, I worked for NDTV for a while doing e-commerce. And that's where I learned digital and performance marketing and brand marketing, things like ORM, online reputation management, a lot of those things which I would never have picked up as a pure play product marketing person.
And I saw in your profile that you also had driven some 3x 300 times traffic and all that to the
Yes,
website. So
that
that's
is
your
true.
digital movement.
Yes, that was, and I was learning and leading at the same time. So a lot of night hours, or to be honest, Jaideep, was spent in learning while I was trying to do my job during the day hours. So
Sure,
that's
sure,
usually how.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And
So it
that
was,
goes back to your, that stretch assignments kind of, or
yeah.
challenges kind of, mindset, right? Okay, I had taken something now completely drastically different. I think it was more of B2C, not, if
Yes,
I'm not
absolutely.
mistaken.
It
Yeah.
was, imagine you're selling wedding wear, wedding clothes online to a set of customers. The company and the leadership wanted me to pump huge amounts of money into marketing, but at the same time, operations was weak. So they were, for example, delivering the wrong color of outfit or wrong size of outfit, making their customers extremely mad, who would go online to social media and complain. And then I had to do
Wow.
damage control. That's where the online reputation management came in, pumping in money where the customer acquisition cost was going through the roof because there were no repeat customers coming back. So it was huge amount of learning. And I realized that in a startup, as a marketing leader, I cannot just do marketing. I have to poke my way into operations and this and that and try to make sure the entire customer journey, which touches multiple departments, is something that I can support with our marketing claims, with our branding claims, right? Otherwise, it falls through.
So
You,
was that a D2C model, like a direct to consumer model there?
yes, absolutely. We were, yeah, they were buying clothes and we were shipping it to them. We had a supply
Wow. So
chain.
this must be the early days of D2C, I guess, right? And now this has become like cult here in from a marketing standpoint. I think so. You did performance marketing, I guess, there, right?
Absolutely. Full on performance marketing campaigns, measured high levels of measurement and metrics driven marketing. Yeah.
And hardcore consumer marketing, right? With
Hardcore consumer marketing.
bridal
Yes.
wear and all that.
Yes. High
Wow. I
risk
mean,
sort of segment. Yes, exactly.
I think that is such an off the book kind of play. Usually, you wouldn't see a B2B marketer jumping into that side because consumer marketing is such like huge investment driven, high risk, um,
Yes.
typically one to many model. But I think times have changed now with so much of personalization. There are so many infrastructure now. There are so much of tools that are available. I'm sure back
Yes.
then probably there were not too many.
Well, there were
And
some, like, for example, Omniture is something we had considered. But again, because we were a startup, we couldn't overinvest on the tools side before the business could support it. And we were always missing that last operational excellence piece, which is why our, revenues, we were all, yeah. So ultimately, the company went bankrupt. I'm sorry to say that. But it resulted in huge learnings for everybody across the board.
sure. So, coming back to SAP, what kind of roles you had played in? Can you share quickly a little bit about, in which role you joined, and then what are the different responsibilities over
Sure.
7 years you played?
Right. So 7 years, Jaideep, I know it sounds like a long time, but I actually held four roles over that time, right? So I joined in India doing industry marketing for SAP solutions in India. And then I moved back to the US in 2019 with a director level role for our customer experience portfolio. Post that, I moved back into industry marketing for a couple of years doing industry cloud solutions. And then my last role there was as a VP of mid market marketing in the US, which meant any company below $1 billion in revenue would be a potential customer. And how do we frame solutions around them? How do we articulate value propositions to address that market, which is growing, but which traditional SAP had not addressed? So it was, again, at that edge. I love operating at the edge.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things that I'm curious about is that for the enterprise and the industry side, and then moving to SMB side, right? What are the different channels or go to market, and how did they differ? I'm sure it wasn't the same mix, right?
Absolutely not. So, very clear difference. And if I have to give you sort of a 30-second high level, the larger the customer, the more we would spend on an event or direct face to face or high marketing dollar investment types of channels, types of GTM strategies. The lower the revenue potential, the more we would do one on many digital campaigns type of approach. Partners become very important. So how do you engage the partners? How do you position your solution? So again, a very different marketing mix, but awareness of where the eyeballs are is ultimately the fundamental tenet of any marketing campaign. So you have to always keep your eyes on where are your customers' eyes and how can I position my message there.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's true. So I worked for IBM for about 5 years, and my first 3 years I was actually in the mid market role,
Mm-hmm.
and which is why I asked you that question, because the go to market was predominantly through partner led.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of these co-marketing activities that we are doing, working with diverse set of partners. And for us, there were multiple demand plays that we actually worked. So it was a combination of hardware and software, because IBM also had hardware basically
Right.
on the server side and the storage side, along with middleware, and then
Mm-hmm.
basically building up the tech stack, and then on top of that the software applications. And when I moved to the enterprise side, that was really like your direct sales model.
Mm-hmm.
um, and a lot of focus there was doing the large industry events, building, doing ABMs, sort of build those
Mm-hmm.
close relationship, tracking the key personas within the company, and essentially identify opportunities within the company. So interesting that I think in the mid market, there's a lot of partner play, obviously, right? And the messaging is so much different, because just the way, like you mentioned, your eyes, the way mid market companies looks like, or the way the buyers behaviors are very different, the psychology is very different. They don't look at a 5 to 10 year period, unlike enterprise look for how do I consolidate my vendors and get a one window kind of thing, right? As opposed to mid market or SMBs, where they buy point solutions from multiple companies, and then that's how kind of a mix and match stack is what they build. So coming back to Astera, you talk to hyperscalers like AWS or Microsoft, and at the end of the day, also with like chip designers, investors, or analysts. There's a lot of conversations in different languages. When I say languages, means in technical languages, to sort of manage this whole ecosystem, right? While you need to say the same thing, but you need to sound different for different people. And I know that probably could be a huge challenge for any corporate marketing people. How does that work? Can you share your own experience?
Of course. So yes, you're so right. The variety of type of organization and individual within organization we talk to is very diverse, right? You mentioned hyperscalers. We talk to the chip companies, our partners, platform partners like the NVIDIAs and AMDs of the world. We talk to ODMs, the system makers. We talk to OEMs as well. And then we talk to other partners in the optical space, for example, in the cables and connector space. So there's a variety of component system makers, hyperscalers, and customers that we talk to. And we still talk about AI so that we can relate to the end consumer of the applications which are built on the systems, which are built on the chips that we make, right? So the entire chain. Very interesting. Coming back to your questions, how do we talk to all of these people? When I first joined, I realized the magnitude of the problem and the fact that it's shifting. So, one of the first things that I put in place as a proposal was a 7 audience framework, that we are actually talking to 7 audiences, right? And who are these 7 audiences? They're customers, they're partners, they're investors, press, analysts, existing employees, and future employees. Because the HR play is huge. As we're growing as a company, we want to attract talent. So I couldn't say as a marketing person, I don't want to talk to future employees. That's HR's problem. So I had to, embrace that as well. But
The
once the
employee brand, right?
yeah, yeah. Once the 7 audience framework was in place, we knew that every time a message goes out, we have to, at least in our minds, know how it relates to these seven audiences. So sometimes we might say, okay, a product launch, maybe our three top audiences will relate to this. So I will create something for these three, not necessary for all seven. Or if it's a corporate level messaging, maybe I'll talk to these other four audiences. So depending on the context, we will prioritize the audience profiles and then make sure that the right tweaks are in place so that the right level of message and complexity can be used. Like for example, for investor audience, we want to talk more about applications and about AI, and then not be as complex at the chip level. But for our customers, it's different. So we have to fine tune it accordingly.
You mentioned events and summit like OCP Summit,
Hmm.
um, and some of the technical conferences. I mean, what is the rationale? Is this because the audience or the target audience really are not receptive to digital per se, or they prefer to have more of face-to-face conversations, see things in actions? What is the reason?
Well, it's all of these that you mentioned, Jaideep, but it's also because we are experiential in the way we have people interact with our products. They see it, they touch it, they feel it, they see it in action, then they see the data behind it, then they see our success when it comes to how we are talking to a variety of people and pulling things in the ecosystem together. And all of that, in early days when we were a startup, it was about building credibility and proof points. Now we are past that point. We are IPO'd, we are a public company, we're growing. So people know us. So that part is almost like, okay, check mark, that part is done. But the products still need to be shown, and that when people interact with it, it's a whole higher level of engagement, and it doesn't happen without demonstrations of the products in their natural habitat, so to speak. So that's important to, yeah, to be able to allow people to interact that way.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about is you started off with a semiconductor company in the product marketing role, right? And then you said, when you went to India, you realized that there was no product marketing role per se, right? Unlike in the US, where you actually already had played multiple product marketing roles. Product marketing since then has evolved a lot. In recent times, there is a lot of discussion in terms of outcome and value coming from product marketing. While I mean, as marketers, we continue to argue the importance of product marketing. I personally is a big believer on product marketing. What's your take on where product marketing is, considering? And I'm particularly asking this question because in recent times we have seen some of the organizations have deprioritized, delinked product marketing, and probably given that role or clubbed that role with the PM organization, given that there was no real ROI sort of connected to that of the product marketer's role. So, how do you see that as someone who started off with product marketing as a career and have spent a lot of time in doing so, and then the industry has evolved and the time has evolved? What's your point of view on this?
That's interesting you put it that way. I think a little bit of the dilution has happened because of software companies coming up with roles that have been hybrid between product management and product marketing. But if I go back to the basics and think about product marketing, it has always been about value creation and value articulation, right? So when I was a product, and I spent a lot of time in audio back in those years, several years in National and then Dolby Labs. So it was really end to end management of a portfolio, right? So you get the voice of the customer, you get the definition of the product done, push it through your design, development, testing, quality phases, and then launch it. But after the launch, you get customer feedback into it, so you can rope it back into the next cycle of development, right? And that's how you create a hardware or a chip portfolio. And then you have pricing on top of that and portfolio. And how are you differentiating each parts of that portfolio? So that has not changed. But maybe the way we talk about the products has become more and more connected with the end value that your customer sees. Whether you're talking about that product in the application and giving the data that your customers will need to see, okay, this is how it is going to perform when I put it in my box. And then also being able to manage the vision of that portfolio so that you're speaking the language of the customer, but also being true to why are we producing these products, what is it in for us, and where is the journey going. So there's a lot expected from a PM role, right? Here at
Yeah.
Astera Labs, our leadership has does understand the value of product marketing. So they've done a lot to develop that team and build it towards being able to manage that vision and articulate that vision. Yeah, it's I think it's a very important part of what we do.
Absolutely. I mean, off late, I have been sort of writing on social media, particularly on LinkedIn, a little bit about the importance of when positioning goes wrong, there is a cascading disaster that happens in downstream, right? Be it on the sales side, be it on the further product development, be it, onboarding wrong customers, right? Because your positioning was not right. And then therefore there's a bad customer experience as well, and then you're getting wrong input from the wrong customer for your product, right? And therefore the whole product roadmap gets imbalanced and impacted. So I think there's a cascading problem there. You talked about portfolio. I think that's probably is such an important thing, that there are of multi-layer architecture in terms of the way, if you're a multi-product company, as a product marketing manager, you are actually managing a family of products which probably are targeted to a different set of people, but their combined value probably rolls up to more singular in nature, where one or two PMs are managing those. Then there's a GTM part as well, right? How do you take the product to market? That's such an important part. With what kind of partners that you'll be working with, and so on, right? So I think it's kind of grossly misunderstood, probably, as marketers are not communicating effectively the value of product marketers in general. Is probably we need to do a bit of good work there. So switching on to something which is more of a buzz, which is AI, and I
Mhm.
believe that you are a little skeptical in the initial part. How is it going for you now with AI, and where do you see AI is, and for broadly in marketing and in the industry, and how marketing is going to adapt? Or one of the things that I hear from many marketers is that the marketing at large is not going to succumb to completely to an AI based agents and tools and so on, but they're going to use more and more these agents and tools to be efficient and more leaner as a team. I wanted to know what you think about it.
Yeah, so we are in an interesting place of being both producers and consumers of AI. We meaning Astera Labs, but also me, my team, our the marketing function
Sure.
here. Yes, I was skeptical initially, and when I talk about skeptical, I want to say maybe 1.5 years back, 2 years back, when we had first started using the tools, OpenAI, the ChatGPT platform first came out. But since then, I have experienced the benefits of AI in many ways, right? Especially in marketing functions where we are constantly creating content. It gives us a volume advantage. We can create more
Yes.
content of a better quality faster. But what has happened is my hiring strategy has changed because now I have to hire people who can manage these tools, who
Hmm.
can deliver a higher level of creativity almost using these tools in conjunction with everything else that we have. So, for example, using some of these tools to create images has become a way for us to cut through the clutter and make our voice stand out because we are using them very creatively, Jaideep. I mean, for example, data centers is where we is our natural habitat for our products. But if we have to do a Christmas message, you don't usually see data centers with Christmas lights, but now we can have them because of AI, right? So we use imagery and content that's very creatively out there and gets the attention because of these tools. So I'm like I've maybe turned 180 degrees in my opinion of them and embraced them in that way.
Yeah, in some way, what you're saying is they're also productivity multipliers, right?
Yes, for sure. Yes. But we need to know how to use them, where to use them, how to effectively manage them. There's more strategic level of thinking needed now from the current modern marketer who will use these tools. It's not just
Hmm.
about hands and feet getting the work done. It's about thinking strategically about how to incorporate these tools with everything else and make it better than what we could have done without.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that you mentioned is very important, which is I think it's going to influence the org design in general, right? How do you build your team? What skills that you look for, and tools and technology, and especially those who are more experimental. And I think rather than playing safe type, right, are probably are the ones who are going to probably survive and thrive in this environment, as compared to, I think, the earlier mindset. As a company, do you run ABM motions, considering that you have obviously a large enterprise kind of?
It's so interesting you say that because I think we are the first semiconductor company that embraced the ABM. So ABMs are a methodology used more with by software companies. In any of the previous semiconductor companies that I have worked in, they were not used. And when I brought it here to Astera Labs, people were like, "What is ABM?" I still get that question by the way. What is ABM? Why do we need to do ABM? What is different about ABM? So yeah, so I brought that methodology in and married it with what our needs were with our customers and our sales team. So yeah, we're currently doing the event piece of that and then considering doing some digital pieces on top as we grow and scale. But yes, it's interesting bringing that methodology here to a very predominantly B2B space, which can
Mhm.
benefit from it. And
Mhm.
we've seen great progress last year, so that function is growing here as well.
So, are you exploring any ABM tools while putting up your kind of foundation layer for ABM, or you plan
Yes,
to do it?
we
Because
will.
I've spoken to two side of the houses. Usually, there are different leaders have different approaches. Let's put it that way.
Right. So, the leg we had to get started quickly was the event side. So that is
Mhm.
building up. And then for the next, 12 to 15 months, we will be looking at tools that help us incorporate the digital bit. Early stages of planning, and then there's a lot to do there. And yeah, we have to always measure it by what can they, because we are a lean organization, so how much can we do and prioritize accordingly. But yes, in the next 15 months for sure we will be evaluating tools around
So,
ABM.
as a leader, right? What is that makes you probably check your mobile even in vacation? Let's put it that way.
Fires that
What keeps
blow
you
up.
awake?
Fires that blow up, Jaydeep. There are fires that are constantly blowing up and I have to sort of spray the extinguisher on them from time to time.
Okay, all right. So let's switch gear. I think you have written about diversity in B2B marketing, and in your experience, how is a diverse team can be more effective in marketing?
Diversity, we experience it along so many angles, right? I mean, it's unfortunately become just about gender and race and color, but there's a lot more to diversity. Where are you coming from? What experiences have you had in the past that informs your point of view? So like I said before, a team is an organism. You cannot have too many brains or too many feet. You have to have a mix of everything. And because you hire, keeping that diversity of skill set in mind, the diversity of background and experience and contribution in mind, every team member becomes very different. And somehow I feel that because we've built the team that way, we are very cohesive. We are constantly watching out for each other. We care more for each other because we realize how different we are and that each person cannot really be replaced. We are very, very tied together like this. The difference of thought brings new levels of ideation to our team, which I think we couldn't have had without that diversity. Because we have people coming from different backgrounds, the life cycle of our company as an AI, hardware, semiconductor, infrastructure company, by nature, we are very different from our peers. We are very young, we don't have the baggage that a lot of the older semiconductor companies have. So we can do different things. But to do that, we need this diversity of thought. And I think we are getting there. We're, of course, not by no means done with the journey, but we have good building blocks in place.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think you started off with the right message that diversity always pushes us to think like either gender or color and so on. But there is so much to it in terms of people coming from different countries bring diversities. People coming from different schools and education background also can bring diversity, and diversity pushes creativity. So I guess you'd always need those challenger people within who keeps challenging the status quo, right? Especially considering traditional conductor industry. I don't want to sort of put them into a bucket, but like you said, being a young company, I think it's an advantage for yourself. In terms of, again, just going back to for a second to SAP, you spent 7 years in SAP, and that basically is kind of a very long time. When today, and you move to now Astera, when you today sort of talk to young marketers, right? What is the message that you usually give? What kind of skill sets that they need to be prepared for, if those who are coming to B2B marketing today?
So, one of the most important things that I've always said, Jaideep, is that think of a CXO, right? Let's think of a chief marketing officer of a company. Those people are not specialists. They are generalists within the domain of marketing because they need to manage P&Ls across a variety of different functions, be it field marketing, brand marketing, digital marketing, corporate marketing, product. There are all these different kinds of marketing. And if you really see yourself as a CMO someday, at some point along the journey, you've got to pick up these different skill sets. So I always tell marketers, think with the mindset of becoming a generalist, not a specialist. You might start as a specialist, but the faster you learn, the faster you pick up these different skill sets, the more opportunities will open up to you to get into leadership, because you can prove that I've done this and I can marry that experience with this experience and give you something that's very custom to you. And that's
That's
basically the
true.
pitch I made when I joined Astera Labs, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
very important to keep that learning mindset. Do not settle for the same experience over and over. Say no to recruiters who will try to push you into the same bucket, and keep learning.
I think there's this new word called full stack marketer, right? So that's what it is. Fortunately, for those who have worked in different of these specialization of functions or sub functions in marketing, over a period of time, they can actually see marketing a lot more holistically rather than seeing from one specific direction. Like for example, I guess the corporate marketing role is something which is kind of new to you, right? I mean, probably as just a dedicated responsibility, because you played product marketing, you did industry marketing, you did enterprise marketing, mid market. These are all different kind of roles. And now corporate marketing, which is the brand story overall, the narrative, this is such an important piece. And I recently had the VP of marketing of Zoho. I think you know Zoho, right? And he was telling his story about corporate marketing because he currently owns that piece, and the narrative, and they have like 55 plus products in their portfolio, right? So it's a complex thing to tell one cohesive story, like we were just earlier mentioning. One of the challenges that I see is that social media, a lot of people struggle now with, the company handle, especially in LinkedIn. The engagement is dropping. LinkedIn platform doesn't push anymore the company handle messages as much as they do for individuals posting their from their own handle. What is your social media strategy in general? I mean, do you, because that's a very important part of, obviously, part of the digital piece, right?
Yeah. And yes, absolutely. Extremely important part of our digital strategy. I was fortunate to come to a company where our CEO very deeply believed in social media. Again, part of us being new and young, right? So when I came in, and over the last year, our industry benchmark for B2B companies engagement metric on LinkedIn is usually around 3.5%. That's the benchmark. And we plug in at about 7.5%. So we are significantly higher in engagement. That comes from doing certain behaviors consistently over time, which is posting, pushing the boundaries when it comes to creativity, with imagery, with content, engaging with our partners. So there are certain things that we do with discipline and hygiene, and we do it consistently, which is why we achieve the numbers. But yes, it's a full time job almost, Jaideep. One of my
It is.
most senior people is engaged on that, and someday if you talk to her, you'll see it's a lot of work.
And in just on the side, content marketing in general, right? When we talk about just about 5 years back, blog was at the middle or center of a lot of our content marketing strategy. But with generative AI coming in, all of these LLMs coming in, today blogs are written left, right, centers by anyone, right? Because people are churning out by prompting. So therefore, the value of the blogs have or good content has come down, at least from a blog perspective. Some of the other formats, like I think, for example, webinars or podcasts such as this one, right? But more from the company aspect, I think have evolved more authentic and more engaging channel with your audience as compared to blogs, and only for that reason. How do you see this panning out from a content marketing standpoint? And do you guys invest in SEO as well?
Yes. So from investment, we do invest in SEO, but we've always, from I would say the genesis of the company, invested a lot in video as a platform to get the message, short form videos. But taking a step back, blogs address the a kind of audience who likes to read, and that engages one part of the brain. Video is more like listening and engaging a little bit more passively. You're not reading actively, so it's a more passive engagement. But there are some people who prefer one learning style over the other. And ideally, from a marketer's hat point of view, I would want my content to be available in both formats so I can address both kinds of audience, right? So that being one piece of it. But you're so right that we used to write blogs for the sake of SEO, for the search engines to pick up the keywords and serve up the content for anybody searching on Google. Now, search is being replaced by ask, right? With the generative AI. You're just asking a
Yeah.
question and getting an answer handed on a platter. So maybe SEO isn't that important for us to hit anymore. It's about training these engines to deliver our content in the way. So, yeah, we continue to do a lot of video. We are investing more in webinars now. I mean, post COVID, the interest in webinars did fall, but you never know. So we want to keep that option open. We're still doing blogs because that is sort of the genesis of spinning this content in multiple formats, multiple modes. So we engage a variety of audiences with different learning styles. So we, in the short term, will continue to do all of these. In the medium term, we'll keep a pulse on which of these is yielding more result and do more of that. And in the long term, we're going to keep ourselves open to learning more. And I'm sure many things will change between now and then.
Yeah, and it's a good segue to say, how do you keep yourself up to date? Do you listen to podcasts? Do you read books or blogs or articles? What do you do?
So I'm a person that loves to read, right? I've read Seth Godin's marketing blog for years. But in the last 1.5 years of Astera Labs, a lot of my good habits have been, can I get my minimum amount of sleep? Can I keep my sanity? Can I still continue to breathe? And can I remember to eat at the right time? So I've not been reading as much as I would like, Jaideep. Even my New York Times news emails that come to me sometimes go unread, which is very unlike me. Someday I will find the time again. But for now my brain is 150% engaged on Astera Labs. I love what I do. It's by no means perfect. I'm not perfect, and but every day I want to improve, and I enjoy that. So for now, it's this. That's the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of the part and parcel of a startup life where you're building something which is meaningful and valuable, right? And that's the reward.
Absolutely.
Okay, where can people find you, Parma?
On LinkedIn, there are multiple Paroma Sens in the domain of marketing, but I'm the one that's in California.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good filter for people who want to find you and connect with you. But it has been wonderful catching up and talking to you, specifically considering that your diverse background with multitude of industries, played multiple roles again in B2B, B2C, within that different functions, and now with corporate marketing hat with one of the fastest growing startups and very exciting one, creating those nervous systems. Fantastic, and all the best to your journey. And I took away a lot of good pointers for, I'm sure the viewers will also appreciate that. Thank you for your time for today.
And thank you for your time. It was lovely speaking with you, learning about your IBM journey, and thank you for reaching out. It was a great pleasure to be here on.
Great. All right. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Okay, thank you.